Sounded like a high school breakup right there. It's over. As we enter in the last week in April, that just means there is one thing left to actually happen, and that is none other than the NFL draft. It is something that we look forward to pretty much the second either our team is eliminated from playoff contention, did not make the playoffs, or when the Super Bowl is over. We're already looking forward to the NFL draft because the season can't really be over, right? There is still so much to talk about, so much going on, and the NFL draft is where it's at. We're going to break down several different sections that are going to be happening, storylines in the NFL draft. But we're also going to be talking about how last night the NHL on the Eastern Conference got their final wild card spot, and we are going to break down several of the first round matchups and to keep an eye on that. But first, I am your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. Welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. Once again, I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and yes, we do have a lot to talk about when it comes to this NFL draft. It seems to be headlines after headlines. It's almost like a chess match, which is going on in the front offices all throughout the NFL on who is going to be drafting who and everything when it comes to that. But we're going to take a deep dive into that, but we also are going to take a dive into the NHL playoffs, more specifically on the Eastern Conference. But first, I want to introduce today my co-host. We've got David Street.
What's up, everybody?
And we've got Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
Yes, NHL playoffs. I want to talk about that, but before we talk about that, I want to give a huge shout out to our friends over at American Daily Press, also known as ADP. They are a budding news organization that is seeking to bring truth and legitimacy back to the world of journalism. It seems like legitimacy and truth is not synonymous in news and journalism nowadays, but ADP, that is exactly what they're trying to do, as their mission is to empower readers with more accurate, well-researched information to foster a deeper understanding of our world, breaking through the propaganda and arming the people with the truth, because in all honesty, that's what matters the most, is giving them the truth. They also just announced several new podcasts they are launching and supporting, including us, of course, Total Sports Talk, Guys Night, and an innovative show with No Soup for Knowles. So if you're looking for the truth and a new news organization and new shows to check out, look no further than AmericanDailyPress.com. Head on over to the site and sign up for their weekly newsletter, and also follow them on Twitter and all major social media platforms. But yes, NHL playoffs, guys. Eastern Conference is set officially. It is a little bit of a sad day for me, as my Pittsburgh Penguins were eliminated last night with the win of the Washington Capitals, and they have secured the final spot. It was coming down to the Capitals, the Red Wings, as well as the Penguins. And yeah, the Capitals were able to fight it out the last part of this season. The last stretch, they started playing better hockey. So did the Penguins, but sometimes it's a little too late to do that. But for the Capitals, they did it just in time as they secured that final spot. David, are you kind of shocked with the Capitals? At one point, it seemed like the Capitals were almost really forgotten this year.
Am I shocked? I mean, not particularly, Matthew. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, any team that has Alex Ovechkin on its roster is always going to have a shot at making the playoffs.
This is very true. This is one of the all-time greats that has really put a stamp on his legacy in hockey. But they did have some, personal drama with Kuznetsov, and they showed that was not going to define who they are as a hockey team, which I respect. And they did make it to the playoffs. So kudos to them for making that final spot. They are going to have a tough task ahead of them, but come Stanley Cup playoffs, anything could happen. But uh, the East, like I said, does have their official seedings in the playoffs, whereas the West, it's still being tweaked about. But I'm really intrigued with actually several of these matchups here in the East. And I want to start out with this first round matchup. You could call it the Battle of Florida. And I know our local Florida resident, David Street, here would have plenty of things to talk about it is the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Well, so far for the Battle of Florida, it's been advantage Tampa Bay Lightning each time. I mean, the last couple of times that we faced each other, we won the first match 4-2, like 4-2, and then the next match we swept them. But things have been very dicey. Things have been very chippy between the Bolts and the Panthers. And for a long time, it really seemed like Tampa was the only, like, could be the only successful hockey team in the state. And then kudos to the Panthers for eventually getting their crap together. And now, two of the best hockey teams in the last 2, 3, 4 years both reside in the Sunshine State. I mean, can you believe we're even saying that? The Battle of Florida here. When you look at these teams, Matthew, it's literally two opposite forces, right? You got a defensive minded team in the Panthers going up against a offensive minded team like the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Panthers, as I pretty much alluded, were one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. Really, the only team that was better than them defensively was the Winnipeg Jets. But Sergei Bobrovsky is an absolute beast at netminder, and there's a reason why he will probably win the Well, Connor Hellebuyck's probably going to win the Vezina, but I imagine that Bobrovsky is at least going to be a Vezina finalist, right? I mean, there's a reason why the Panthers have been one of the best teams in the league for the past few years, ever since getting Bobrovsky, because a guy like that always gives you a chance to win. Now, for the Tampa Bay Lightning, meanwhile, I said that we're an offensive-minded team, and our defense was really terrible all season long, and it certainly didn't help at all when we started the season without Andre Vasilevsky. He was out for like the first month or so, beginning of the season. And then when he came back, he was still rusty. And, not to say that he was the only reason why our defense was bad, because defense comes down to more than just our goalie. But the fact that Vasilevsky was rusty when he did come back certainly didn't help us at all. But he wasn't. But he finally did kind of round into form in the last month or so, and I don't think it's a coincidence, Matthew, that the time when Vasilevsky finally rounds into form is when the Lightning start playing their best hockey. Going into the playoffs. And we can't talk about the Lightning without talking about Kucherov, because he literally just secured his 100th assist, becoming, I think, just the fifth player to do so and the first player to do it in like 3 or 4 days, because Connor McDavid had 100 assists, just a few days before him. But man, what a treat it is just to watch, Kucherov, man, and like to all the people who just hate him for no reason and just disrespect him. That's your prerogative, but just know that you're watching history before your very eyes. Okay, just know that what you're watching right now is just, you're truly watching a special player, man. And like I don't know I don't know what else to say beyond that. There's truly not enough words to describe a special player like Kucherov. Who's going to win this matchup? I mean, I think statistically the Panthers are a better team. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I'm usually always going to take defense over offense in the playoffs, but, and I am being biased here, so you know where I'm going with this. It's just hard to ignore the playoff, history, the playoff pedigree that the Lightning have. I mean, yes, we lost a lot of players within the last couple of years, but we still got guys like Vasilevsky, Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, Nikita Kucherov, of course, and Braden Point. And really, anybody who watches this team, guys, knows that the Lightning have pretty much proven that no matter what happens in the regular season, when the playoffs come, they just flip a switch, right? Some teams are like that. There are some teams where sure, they're not intentionally tanking in the regular season. Of course, they want to do better in the regular season, but the playoffs come and they just flip a switch. So I think it'll be a good matchup. Like I said, I think the Panthers are a better team statistically speaking, but at the end of the day, I think the Lightning have more. They have better playoff experience, and I think that's going to win in the end. So give me the Lightning over the Panthers in 7 games. I was going to say 6, but I can see the series going the whole 7.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Panthers, who did make the Stanley Cup final last year. They did start off slow and they did pick it up after the All-Star break pretty impressively. But the Lightning are playing some of their best hockey right now, and and I don't want to say that they've hit their peak because that may not necessarily be true. But this Lightning team does have the resume when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs, being back-to-back champs. Just as of recent, and uh, I feel like they could still do that. Really, in all honesty, they could still be streaky when it comes to that. So I think it's gonna be an amazing matchup that I'm actually really looking forward to. But another first round matchup that I really have my eyes on, and that's the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs, because this is a Bruins team who set a record last year, had the most points ever, and were the President's Trophy team by far, and they just blew it in the first round, the curse, you know?
Not not just the most points. They also had the most wins ever.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Yep,
this was
crazy season.
the best, regular season hockey teams that we've ever seen. And then playoffs come and the curse really struck them and they lost in the first round. Well, this year they are not the President's Trophy winner, but they are facing off a Toronto Maple Leafs team who we all know is led by Austin Matthews, who has led the NHL in goals this year. But this Boston Bruins team, make no mistake, just because they didn't have this impressive resume like they did last year, this is still a team that you don't want to play. I think this Boston Bruins team is very complete, and they're always going to be physical, especially when they have Brad Marchand there still. They will always be very physical, and I'm really, really intrigued with this matchup here. It seems like they always seem to play each other. Me and David have talked about that. Oh, look, it's the Bruins and Leafs again. Oh, yay. But the Leafs really struggle though when it comes to these early matchups in the playoffs. Austin Matthews, since he's been there, they haven't really been able to thrive as much. They did, I want to say, a little bit more last year, but they haven't been able to do that as much when you have a star like that. There, same thing with the Oilers. They finally had a decent year in the playoffs, but uh, you don't want to squander that type of talent. But I think the Bruins are going to take this one pretty easily, guys. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I just think this Bruins team, bringing a lot back, especially from last year, they still have that talent.
Yeah, I mean,
This is
just
still a team that has 109 points on the season, and Jeremy Swayman's given up only 2.5 goals a game. So that that kind of pedigree moving into the second season after such a disappointing knockout in the first round last year, they've got a chip on their shoulder. They've got something to prove, and with Austin Matthews coming in at 69 goals, uh, that is a high mark to be working off of.
and
And
may I remind everybody that Austin Matthews did not get a 70th goal because of not because of our starting goaltender, but because of our backup goaltender. So ha 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 ha. There you go.
okay. So I'm with you, Matthew. The Bruins, I think, do take this. Toronto just got off the schneid about getting out of the first round last year, so I think they're going to fall back into it this year.
Yeah.
And I think it should also be worth noting that really a big reason why Toronto won. I mean, they beat my team last year, and not to make excuses, but we were coming off of back to back Stanley Cup appearances. Like we we were basically exhausted at that point. Like you can only make it deep into the playoffs for so long every year before fatigue finally catches up with you, and that's pretty much what happened with the Lightning. So I agree. I think the Bruins take this one.
So you're going with the Buffalo Bills defense. I get it.
Yeah.
I guess I
Yep.
am.
I talked about one of these teams earlier when I talked about the wild card spot, but like talked about the Bruins and the curse of the President's Trophy last year. Well, President's Trophy has officially been awarded to the New York Rangers as they take that into the playoffs as they face off against the Washington Capitals, and it's almost like take all your chips and put it on red. I mean, put it on the Capitals because if history has shown itself, it's Capitals all the way, whether it goes 7 games. But in all seriousness, no, without trying to be contradicting, I do think the Rangers really do take this. I think that they kind of end this curse, or at least they push the curse aside this year. This Rangers team is very talented, from Chris Kreider to Zibanejad. They have a lot of great weapons there, and don't get me wrong, the Capitals do too. TJ Oshie is one of my favorite players in the game. He has been for a long time. He's one of those that he's like an unsung hero. He's very quiet, doesn't get talked about a lot. But without TJ Oshie, there is no way this Capitals team is in the playoffs. Even though how great Ovechkin is, TJ Oshie is really that. He's like that leader to that team. But you kind of can't be a leader when you have, the Babe Ruth on the team. You've got Ovi, who's just been in the league for so long. He's a superstar, silver fox, whatever you want to call him. He's an OG, and he deserves to be that leader of that team. But the Rangers, just from head to toe, I think that they just have too much talent. There is a reason that they are there. I get that. Yeah, the Bruins had a reason to be the number one team last year too, but the curse caught up to them. But I think this year the Rangers are going to really push that aside and take this series.
Let me ask you guys, when was the last time you saw a team make the playoffs with more than a negative 35 goal differential?
I mean, the last team to make the playoffs with a negative goal differential was the Montreal Canadiens, which of course was during a shortened season. But even then, that was like a -3 or -4 goal differential. Ed, I don't remember the last time someone made the playoffs with a negative goal differential that bad.
Yeah. Ed, I know who you're talking about, but let the audience know just how bad this team really is.
The Washington Capitals are going into the playoffs with a negative 37 goal differential. That is insane. How do you squeak by and then get blown out in every loss?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
You're pretty much right. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. It's like, most of their wins they squeak by, and then most of their losses they just get, blown the crap out.
Yeah, that's pretty much that exact recipe there. But this Rangers team has all the ingredients to create these blowouts once again for the Capitals. So I see it being exactly that going into this. But it still blows my mind that the Capitals squeaked by with that amount of a negative goal differential to make the playoffs. I don't know if just the rest of the teams were just that bad, but the Capitals they made it through. It almost reminds me of the year, and I'm talking about a different sport, but this is more of a dig at me, but it's like when my Steelers, it's our last playoff victory where we have a drought, but our last playoff victory was against the Chiefs, where not a single one of us made a touchdown. It was all field goals. The whole game was field goals. And it's like, how'd you even make it to the playoffs? You couldn't even score a touchdown. It's like, it's embarrassing. Yes, a win is a win, but yeah, not a single touchdown was scored that game. And with the Capitals, with that negative goal differential, it's embarrassing. But at the end of the day, they made the playoffs.
Yep.
I'll tell you, a team that didn't make the playoffs once again is the Pittsburgh Penguins. They did not, but this is big because the Penguins, they don't miss back-to-back playoffs. This is almost unheard of. I mean, it's been since the early 2000s that the Penguins did that last. So that just shows you how they've been a dominant team enough to make the playoffs every single year for the most part, at least not missing back-to-back times. But the NHL is heartless. It's ruthless when it comes to a head coach. It's one of the only sports that it doesn't matter if it's the middle of the year, end of the year, 10th game of the year. If they want to fire you, they're going to fire you. And we've seen it more and more now. But Mike Sullivan with the Pittsburgh Penguins, he's been there. He's won back-to-back Stanley Cups. His first years there. Is his tenure finally done in Pittsburgh? And David, who's seen a lot of firings in his time, do you think it kind of smells like that?
I think it definitely does, Matthew, but it's also complicated because on one hand, not only is it pretty much unacceptable to miss the playoffs in Pittsburgh, but to miss the playoffs when you have guys like uh, Crosby and Malkin and Letang. But on the other hand, yes, those are three of the best players in the league, or like they have been the three best players in the league. On the other hand, though, they're also getting up there in age, and I don't care how good you are. I don't care what your legacy, what your resume is like. Your age catches up to you eventually. So it's like, did Sullivan really do a bad job coaching because you guys missed the playoffs for the second year in a row? Or should you guys consider yourselves lucky that you were even, close to the playoffs and in the first place? I think Pittsburgh management has a really, really tough decision to make.
Oh, very tough decision. Pittsburgh has a high standard, high expectations. And the thing is this last offseason, they made a trade for Eric Carlson from the San Jose Sharks. It would be nice to say that we rescued him out of there, but look at us, we didn't make the playoffs. But they were expecting with that trade to really up their offense, even though he's on the defensive side, but the more importantly, their power play. And we ranked 31st in power play efficiency, and that's embarrassing when you have Eric Carlson, who's one of the best one-timers in the game and led the league last year in one-timers on power plays, and now we're 31st. That it's embarrassing. You can't have that happening. That's the one reason why we traded for him. So to have that, now you're wondering, well, is that the coach's fault, or what exactly caused that to happen? Because that's a big dip to have one of the number one, you know, offensive power players out there and then now be ranked 31st. It's just not. That's not good, especially when you're in Pittsburgh. So it's going to be a tough decision. If they were to fire him, I would totally be for promoting Todd Reardon, who is our assistant, who's been with the franchise for a long time. He has several ties in the NHL. He coached as a head coach for the Capitals. He's done his due diligence, in my opinion, and been around the organization enough that I would be fine with him getting promoted. But at the same time, I've always been a fan of Sullivan, so I would like to also see him stay at the same time. So
I
it's
think,
tough.
and last thing I'll add is that if there is a reason why you fire Sullivan, it's if you want to. I don't want to say do a full blown rebuild, but kind of like I guess get rid of some contracts, get rid of some players, and find a new guy to be the new voice of the locker room, which I think is pretty much what you were saying, Matthew.
Well, we threw a lot of money, and we already extended Tristan Jari under the net, and he just did horrible this year. But we've extended him, till 2027.
Which
We
was
just
weird
had,
because wasn't he? Didn't he have a great season last year?
yeah. I mean, he did great last year, even in the All Star game. I mean, he was the top goaltender. It's just he really made a name for himself. But then he's dealt with injuries a lot too, and this year he's just been like a roller coaster. Sometimes up, sometimes down, and unfortunately, the downs really affected us this year. But that's about all about with hockey today. I really want to talk about this NFL draft and some of the top headlines going into the NFL draft, because you could look around at probably several different headlines, just say in the last couple of weeks, and you're going to see some very contradicting things. Of course, most of them are opinions. Nothing has actually been set in stone unless there is a leak out there. But this is all a chess game. I've said that earlier in my intro, and I'm going to say it again. everything's a chess game. They want you to think that you want this guy. In reality, they want this guy over here. But when it comes to that first overall pick, I think it is safe to say that we know for sure who that's going to be now that we saw that the Chicago Bears did ship out Justin Fields. They are in the market for a quarterback, and it seems like it's going to be Caleb Williams. So, first, I just want to ask you guys just that question. Do you think Caleb Williams is the number one overall pick?
Without question.
Is grass green?
Sometimes in the winter and summer, no, if you don't take care of it. But yes, Caleb Williams will more than likely be that first overall pick. But he's not going to be the only quarterback taken in this draft, and that's one of the headlines in this first round alone is how many quarterbacks are going to be taken in the first round. Ed, I'm going to let you take this first. How many quarterbacks and who are those quarterbacks do you think will be drafted in the first round?
You know, in the first round, I see teams year after year after year go and reach for quarterbacks that don't necessarily need to be in the first round, but they wind up being in the first round. And quite honestly, there's some advantage to it on the back end for them because if you draft a quarterback in the first round, you do get that fifth year option that you could keep a guy one extra year before you extend him because you're giving him time to figure out if he is going to be the guy as part of your organization. So I I can see up to six quarterbacks easily going in the first round. You already mentioned Caleb Williams. Uh, I think we all know Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy is just a wild case that's out there. Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. I think they all find a home in the first round. And much like uh, Lamar Jackson being picked last by the Ravens in the first round, I think that's where you'll see somebody take Michael Penix as not necessarily a get him on the field right away, but somebody to develop for a year because they already have somebody that they're successful with already.
Yeah, I mean, I could pretty much agree with that. David, I mean, you agree about six people or six quarterbacks in the first round, or
No,
what do you?
I agree. But I also want to say something real quick about Caleb Williams. Obviously, we're all in agreement here that Caleb Williams is going to be the number one guy taken. But for Caleb Williams, I'm not trying to say that he's going to be a bust. I think he's got the skills, but I feel like there's potential for Williams to, be be the first bust in NFL history strictly because of off the field issues. If that makes any sense, I'm not questioning his on field abilities, right? But like we've seen how the guy acts. I mean, he paints his nails, which no matter how many times people try to justify it, a man painting his nails, okay, will never be normal, right? I mean, there's been times where he whines, he pouts, and it's like, well, how are things going to look for you? How are things going to be for you when you finally get to the big league, right? So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I feel like if Williams is a bust, which I'm not saying he will be, but if he is, it'll be less so about his playing abilities and just more so how he carries himself off the field. I know maybe I'm being salty, maybe I am, but that's just what I think.
I think Caleb Williams is going to be a bust because he's still going to be behind the same offensive line that Justin Fields had.
Yeah,
I mean, it's because that's a big part of it. Now, when it comes to Jaden Daniels, there it's going to take something more than what we saw him do in college. Yes, he had a great college career. Yes, he had a phenomenal season last year. But part of that part of that excitement that he brought on was how fast he was compared to everybody else around him. When you get into the NFL, everybody's that fast. So he has really got to be able to be patient and go through progressions and be able to play from the pocket and use that escapability as a last resort, not the first resort. So that's where I'm hoping Jaden Daniels falls. But it's going to be a tough transition for him to see everybody running alongside him rather than running behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ed, you mentioned a name at quarterback just a couple minutes ago with JJ McCarthy, and I just want to hone in on a point here with JJ McCarthy. Peter Schrager released his mock draft today. This is just mock drafts. There's nothing official. These are just more speculation, opinions, and on his mock draft, he saw JJ McCarthy being taken fourth. And right now, the Arizona Cardinals hold that fourth pick. They will not be drafting a quarterback as they have Kyler Murray. But what I found very interesting about this is NFL GMs contacted Peter Schrager immediately when they saw this come out. And you could take this however you want. Could be one of two things, but the fact that they contacted him, he said several of them did, asking about this of did something leak? Is there any truth to this? And what team is trading? Just they were really curious about this, and it makes me wonder, are there a lot of teams high on JJ McCarthy? Is that why they contacted him? Or two, are they like, you're out of your mind. This doesn't make any sense to us of why you would have him at 4. And if you haven't seen a lot of the reports pretty much since the combine, it seems like everyone is high on JJ McCarthy all of a sudden, and it kind of blows my mind.
Well, do GMs not know what a mock draft is? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to pick JJ McCarthy just because a guy named Peter Schrager had him mocked as the fourth pick. So, come on now.
Well, it's just we saw the Vikings. They now have 2 first-round picks. It's almost a given they plan on trading up and getting a quarterback, and it's pretty much been rumored it is going to be JJ McCarthy if they could find a potential trade suitor and
Wait, who
someone.
the Giants?
The Vikings.
Oh, the Vikings. Okay.
The Vikings got yeah, they got Houston's first round draft pick as well, so they're trying to use that as trade package to get up into possibly the top 5, top 7 to get JJ McCarthy, whereas Arizona doesn't need a quarterback, so they would probably be willing to get in a couple extra picks.
Are they overshooting the value of moving up to get JJ McCarthy because they know the Giants want him?
It makes you wonder because here are the Giants, trying to say that, oh, they are committed to Daniel Jones, they are paying him. You could still be committed to him, but you could still also draft a quarterback to replace him. I mean,
It
two
would
things can be right at once.
it would be very New York Giants esque for them to take a JJ.
I think in some way they feel like JJ McCarthy could be a quarterback to develop while Daniel Jones is writing out the last half of his big mega deal that he signed, because they know that they're going to get rid of him because he went back to being, oh no, Daniel Jones, uh, getting injured every year. They signed Daniel Jones after the anomaly year where he played all 16 games.
And even his best year wasn't that great, Ed.
Exactly. So I I could certainly see the Giants really wanting to get into the JJ McCarthy mix. It's just, do they try and jump up to go get him? And if they do they jump up enough where Minnesota is trying to package these picks to create a bigger jump to where the Giants absolutely could not get that high?
Yeah, I think that could be the kind of their thought process of what they plan on doing. But there's still several more quarterbacks that aren't going to get drafted in the first round, and it makes you wonder of these quarterbacks, can any of them really lead a franchise to success? And of these quarterbacks, you have Michael Pratt out of Tulane, Spencer Rattler, Joe Milton, Sam Hartman. And really quick before you guys answer that, if Caleb Williams anyone to thank for his now success almost, it's got to be the demise of Spencer Rattler, because Spencer Rattler was the starting quarterback at Oklahoma, and he just had a big downfall, which led to Caleb Williams taking over, and then of course transferring with uh, Lincoln Riley to USC. So I mean, Spencer Rattler, thanks, bud, but because of you, your backup is now the #1 pick in the NFL draft.
Well, I've actually, Matthew. It's funny that you mention Spencer Rattler's downfall, because that's actually a big reason why I think of all those quarterbacks you mentioned that are likely going to be taken out of the first round. I think Rattler has the best chance to be the best leader in in that group, because of that downfall. We've seen him hit rock bottom and rise up to the top. Well, not literally to the top, because he hasn't won a championship, but you know what I mean. We've seen him go from a prima donna to a true leader of the locker room, and I think one of the defining traits of leadership, of being a leader, is sort of going through that growth, having that sort of personal redemption for yourself, and I think that's exactly what we saw with Rattler. He went from, like I said, he went from a prima donna to being a true leader of the locker room.
Spencer Rattler is giving me Kirk Cousins vibes. I don't know why.
You like that?
You like that? You like that? And really, it kind of comes from the fact that when you see Spencer Rattler throw, the ball jumps out of his hand way more than any of these other three guys. Not saying anything bad about any of them, especially Joe Milton. He can launch it, but when you're talking about somebody that can make all the throws long and short, Spencer Rattler seems to have, that full dynamic range of where the ball needs to go. Yes, could he use some fine tuning? Absolutely. But I do think that he is a guy that could either be a really good backup for a long time in this league, or be a good spot starter and maybe wind up being a full-time starter to get a team through, kind of like a Gardner Minshew, if you will. I'm making all these comparisons. I know I don't want to be confusing. But Gardner Minshew came into the league, good arm, good accuracy, knew how to throw in a pro-style offense, and that to me feels a little bit like Spencer Rattler. He's going to be a later round guy. I don't know how late. I think right now he's projected third or fourth round. So there's going to be some growth there, but also keep in mind there are two starting quarterbacks in the league that were drafted third round or later, and that's Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson. So it's possible for quarterbacks out of those rounds to come in and make an impact right away. We've just got to see what kind of growth he has within the offense in the first training camp.
Well, the other thing too about Rattler that I want to add is that from what I've gathered from my understanding, a big reason for Rattler's big ego was because he was a big hotshot in high school. Like, he was the guy in high school. He was the number one ranked quarterback in the country, I think, or certainly at least top three, top five. And his ego got shot because it turns out, well, college football and high school football are completely different, much like how college football and professional football are completely different. So it really kind of took that humbling for Rattler, for him to truly grow up, for him to realize, well, hang on, maybe I'm not such a big shot. Like, maybe I do need humility. Maybe I do need to humble myself here.
Oh, that's exactly what happened. Out of these four quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler and Sam Hartman were on this Netflix show QB1, and you were able to see Spencer Rattler when he was in high school. He did go through. I mean, he was in high school. Let's keep in mind he was still a kid, but he went through this really immature phase that was actually hurting him, and it did carry over into Oklahoma. And that downfall was actually the best thing to happen to him because he matured and he got even better on the football field and as a leader as he went to South Carolina and did change it all around and now is a phenomenal quarterback. But there are other, you know, positions out there that are going to be drafted in the first round. And I want to switch over to the opposite side of the ball, and I want to talk about a defensive player, so a non-offensive player, of who we think is going to be that first defensive player to be drafted in this upcoming draft. Because all the talk is Caleb Williams, quarterback, or Marvin Harrison Jr., receiver, and so forth, offensive line. But what about these defensive guys? Because there are some studs out there. And there is one stud that me and David have a lot of agreement on this player. David, do you want to talk about, even though he's on your rival team?
Jared Verse, I think, is going to be the first defensive player drafted, or at the very least, should be the first defensive player drafted, okay? Because he's got production, he's fast as hell, strong as hell, right? And he's practically unblockable. I mean, we've talked about it before, but in the game against Florida, when he just completely tossed offensive lineman Damian George around like a rag doll, I mean, and Damian George kind of sucked as an offensive lineman. Let's be fair about that. But the fact remains that this dude is just a freaking beast, and he gives defenses, he gives defensive coordinators nightmares. So yes, even though he did play for a rival team, Matthew, I think Jared Verse should be the first defensive player drafted. He's pretty much the total package when it comes to defense.
You need to always give credit where credit's due, regardless whether they're on a rival team or a team you just hate, despise. Credit always needs to go where credit is due. This is a tough conversation because there's a list of guys here that are just so talented, but it's ultimately what's going to matter is that team that needs someone defensively. Do they need someone more at a secondary position or they need someone up on that line? And that's where it's really going to matter because you have Dallas Turner out of Alabama and then you have Terrion Arnold, Alabama. They're both defensive players, but two different sides pretty much. And it's really going to be, well, does this team that's drafting right now, where do they really need help the most? And so like I said, all these guys deserve to be, in my opinion, the number one defensive player, whether it is Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo, Terrion Arnold. The list goes on because these guys have shown in their college careers so far that they deserve to be up there. It's just going to be ultimately who that team is and what their need is. But Ed, who do you think really deserves to be that number one guy to go off the board?
It's hard to argue with what y'all are saying with Jared Verse. Uh, Defense in the NFL right now is so multiple at every position. You have to be able to do so many multiple things at one time. And with that in mind, I'm going to go Dallas Turner. He's been on the end. He's been in linebacker. He's been on coverage. He's done so many things and done them well that it's hard to say that he's not going to be able to make that transition into uh, several different techniques that they teach at the NFL level. He's already played in some of the best defenses in college alongside Will Anderson. Uh, so he knows what it's like to be around that level of talent and be able to feed off of it. So he's going to be able to take that next step and be that next guy. So I just to be contradictory to you guys, I'll pick Dallas Turner, and we've got two guys out there that we think are going to be the first non-offensive player taken because the first half of this draft is heavy on the offense.
I'm drawing a blank, Ed, but how do you feel about that one dude from Texas? I can't remember his name.
Byron Murphy or Tavondre Sweat?
Is Murphy the defensive player?
They were both the defensive tackles.
Okay, then I
They're
guess
both
like
pretty great.
how do you feel about either or both of them?
I think Byron Murphy is going to translate better as a defensive tackle in the league, in more of a 4-3 set, if you will. I think Tavondre Sweat. We'll see what happens with his current off the field issues, but I think he could become like a Casey Hampton type, just an anchor of a 3-4.
Hmm.
That he's that kind of big bodied but agile in the center of the defensive line kind of guy. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the two different styles because this isn't the first time that a Texas fan has seen this. We had Casey Hampton and Sean Rogers at the beginning of the century, and here we are again with Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. So it's deja vu all over again, them both coming in the league at the same time. They're both going to be two different kind of defensive linemen in this league, and I think they're both going to have really good careers.
Yeah, I mean, Byron Murphy. I don't know why I see his name, I hear his name. Something honestly tells me Buccaneers. So, David, if the Bucks get him, you guys will definitely get a great defensive lineman there with Byron Murphy.
I wouldn't hate it. So
Yeah, but
Matt, do you like that
oh,
Casey?
I love Casey Hampton, big boy Casey Hampton, 98. Gosh, he couldn't even fit in his jersey. That was a big boy. It was a big boy. But Ed talked about it as far as offense really taking over the beginning of this draft, and we have to talk about this wide receiver bunch here. It is almost certain that Marvin Harrison Jr. will be the number one receiver taken, but is it though? Do you believe the reports that come out saying a lot of GMs would prefer Malik Neighbors, or do you think this is all just a smokescreen?
a lot of GMs on who Madden. Man, much like
Maybe.
Caleb Williams being the obvious choice at quarterback and the number one pick, we all know that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the first receiver taken.
But wouldn't it be just like the Arizona Cardinals to take Malik to stay where they are and take Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr.? Wouldn't it be like them to do that?
They are
Yeah,
quickly becoming
yeah.
the biggest joke in the NFL. They really are. The Cardinals are. So, yes, it would be very much like him. But, yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. is pretty much the consensus number one wide receiver taken. But after that, who are we seeing being taken after him? I did just mention Malik Neighbors. I almost feel like that would be the obvious second choice with him. And then after that, Romo Dunze out of Washington being the number three wide receiver taken off the board. Do you agree with him being number three?
I certainly agree with it, and there's a couple of different places where I could see him making sense, like the Jets, just to make sure that they've got another wide receiver on the opposite side for a full season of Aaron Rodgers out there.
You don't think they're gonna try to get McCole Hardman back?
Hey, you can never have too many good wide receivers with that kind of quarterback.
I
Yeah,
think, I mean, if we're just talking about your abilities as a receiver, then I think the next guy taken could be Brock Bowers. But if we're just talking about the official wide receiver position, then yeah, I pretty much agree with you, Matthew. I think it's going to be Harrison Jr., followed by Neighbors, followed by Odunze.
well, I think it does get kind of chaos a little bit after that because Brock Bowers could be that next guy that is drafted. He is a tight end, but that guy can catch the ball. He is, a Travis Kelsey, George Kittle like tight end who can really run his routes and catch the ball. So it could very well be him off the board next, or you have Brian Thomas Jr. as well out of LSU. There's a lot of wide receivers in this
On
draft.
Coleman.
Keon
Yeah.
Coleman, Jalen McMillan out of Washington.
Ricky Pearsall, don't forget about him.
Yeah. So there is probably a bigger list on wide receivers than there are quarterbacks, but quarterbacks, of course, will always rule football. It is what it is at the end of the day.
And I've said this on this show before, but the NFL offense that's out there that's evolving I feel like is evolving more to be in between the hash marks, and that's where Brock Bowers lives. So it would not surprise me at all to see Brock Bowers go before Aroma Dunze or Keon Coleman or any of these other guys, because those that are on the cutting edge of offense in the NFL, they're going to see that, recognize it, and play toward that and draft toward that when you have one of the best tight ends come out in quite some time. It just makes sense.
Absolutely does. I mean, this is a tight end that was already going to be considered a Heisman like pick before the season started. And you don't really ever have a tight end in the conversation of that, but that's just how good Brock Bowers is. And everyone knows it's going to transfer over to the NFL because we are seeing the age of tight ends really being rejuvenated once again with all that Travis Kelce has done, all that George Kittle has done. So the tight end position is really becoming a staple in football. So Brock
Don't
Bowers will definitely be up there, possibly top 10, top 15.
don't forget that one of the best offensive rookies this past season was a tight end out of Detroit, Sam Laporta.
Mm-hmm. And also, Atlanta's got their tight end.
Sam Laporta was a stud.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, NBA last night, the NBA had the play-in for the NBA playoffs, and it all started with the Lakers and the Pelicans, and the Lakers were controlling that game for the most part. The Pelicans stormed back. They tied the game, and with 3 minutes left, Zion Williamson was then heading to the locker room, and it was like deja vu all over again with his career in the NBA. And it's been official that Zion Williamson does have a hamstring-like injury.
Mm-hmm.
And he will not be playing their next game. Yes, I did not really mention, but the Lakers did end up picking up the win, and they are now the official number 7 seed, where they will go on to play the Denver Nuggets, which is a very interesting playoff matchup. It's actually a rematch of last year's. But then the Kings actually beat the Golden State Warriors. I am taking this victory. I am running with it because,
Crushed
well,
them.
not too many, yeah, not too many teams, especially in the playoffs, can beat the Warriors. And I know this really isn't considered the playoffs, but it is. It isn't. However you want to consider it. But it was a
Just
one
call it
game
the
type of
postseason.
playoff.
It's not the regular
Yeah, yeah,
season.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
the regular season. So just call it the postseason.
yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't
So
count
and
toward playoff
uh,
wins, though. It's weird.
yeah, they still have yet to really figure out the whole
Yeah.
dynamics of it. But the Kings did win. The Warriors are officially eliminated, but now the Kings have to beat the Pelicans. The winner of that game will then be the last and final seed as the 8th seed in the West. Pelicans, though, without Zion Williamson, that is going to be a tough blow for them. But the Pelicans are 5-0 against the Kings this year with like an average margin of victory of like 25 points or more. They killed us all 5 games this year. It was embarrassing. So, without Zion, though, I still think that the Pelicans can win this game. But if the Kings play like they did last night, could have a chance. It would be nice to have Malik Monk back, but I don't see that happening. But
Well,
uh,
it's crazy, Matthew, because Clay Thompson scored what 0 points. So did y'all really lock him up, or did he just play like shit?
played horrible. I mean, it's weird because I've seen that he had 0 points. I mean, I watched the game, but I saw him make a free throw, so I know he didn't end with 0 points. But he was 0 for. I know he was 0 for 4 from 3-point range. He ended the game like 0 for like 11, something like, or 0 for 9. He could not splash. The Splash Brothers were no longer able to splash anything. He might have shot his way out of Golden State, although they've made comments already that they would love to have him back. He is going to be a free agent. So, but that was just kind of embarrassing. That was not Klay Thompson-esque, but that's this whole year. There's a reason why he got benched was because of that. So Golden State, they were kind of iffy with their identity, and they probably thought Steph was going to bail them out just like he did last year against us in Game 7 when he scored 50. But this year, he did not, and the Warriors lost the game. But as we came onto this show, the Sixers did beat the Miami Heat. So that has already been settled, and then we still have the last Eastern Conference game to be played right now as well.
Question for you
So
guys.
it's very intriguing.
Question for you guys. The Golden State trio, have they aged themselves out? Are they done?
I think they are. They had a phenomenal run together with multiple NBA championships, Ed. But yeah, I think they're done for sure. All good things come
This
to an
isn't
end.
your this isn't your Tony Parker, Ginobili, and Tim Duncan, who although did it still even when they were older. And I'm not saying that they're old, the Draymond Green in them, but Draymond this year with his suspensions and all that didn't help. Klay Thompson not being able to hit a shot, had more bricks than a house, and Steph Curry can only do so much. I do think that they are done.
And I saw the clip where Klay Thompson was on Draymond Green's podcast and basically saying, "We can't be us if you're not there," and that was kind of a shall I say backward long. It took him a long time to formulate that answer when he was on the show, and it just felt like it was, I can't play with you anymore, dude. Because I can't figure out what you're going to be or where you're going to be or if you're even going to be part of the team.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting how Matthew, you talk about the Warriors having no identity, which is just crazy for you to even say, because it wasn't long ago that these guys did have an identity. They were a jump shooting team who could also play defense, and you know what? That style did work at that time. Obviously, it worked, right? But that style just doesn't work anymore, because I think we're all seeing kind of the evolution of the big man. I mean, look at the teams that have won it recently. The Milwaukee Bucks won it a few years ago with Giannis. Obviously, the Nuggets won it last year with Jokic, and the Warriors. Let's be real here. They do not have a big man like Jokic or Giannis. So I think that's a huge contributing factor for them just not being as competitive as they were before.
Yeah. I mean, they do have Looney, who does tend to help get a lot of the boards, but he can only do so much. Also, in addition to Steph Curry really trying to produce the offense, and if Steph Curry's not on, then the team's just not going to thrive, and that's what happened last night. Also, so, but there was some breaking news that happened in the NBA today. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has now officially banned Jonte Porter from the NBA for life due to his scandals with gambling. And this includes him giving out private information in regards to bettors, and him checking himself out to help at betting in at least one game. And then he also personally betted while he was in the G League, which that does not really matter to me, but it was mainly the first one, the fact that he was giving out private information to these bettors or bookies, however what you want to call it.
It's funny to me that all he netted out of all this is $21,000 versus an NBA career.
Right.
This is insane to me that somebody would think that was a good idea.
I'm wondering if he was the fall guy for Otani or something. Maybe they found another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I mean,
He needed to hire himself an interpreter. That's what it
I mean,
was.
what an idiot, But I do find it kind of a tad bit disturbing when we can kind of see where the NBA's priorities lie. Like, you know, you can commit domestic assault like Miles Bridges, allegedly dead, and yet he still gets to play. But but betting crosses the line. And yeah, I know the argument because I've seen the argument before. It basically comes down to, well, domestic violence is horrible, but it doesn't affect the game. It doesn't affect the results. Yeah, okay, it's still a shitty thing to do.
Yeah, it is bad. I mean, we all know the Pete Rose story and the situation there, and that was why sports betting in general was just kind of almost frowned upon. And there's a lot of states that are just now legalizing it, even though they have the lottery there and they have
Still waiting.
casinos and what.
Still waiting.
Still, yeah, Texas still waiting, but uh, yeah, he $12,000 or so. But you can't give out information like he did. I mean, they did their investigation. It was almost certain once it was flagged that this was going to be a pretty bigger issue, and there still could be more that comes out. I mean, look at the whole situation with Otani's interpreter. It was originally thought that it was about $4 million that was stolen, and then you found out the actual real number later.
Which
I
was
mean,
more than that, right?
yeah,
Add some zeros.
Yeah.
yes. Well, and that's more of what was stolen. If you saw how much he bet in total, I mean, his wins and losses, we're talking a lot of millions. That just happened to be the difference of his losses and
Yeah.
what was claimed to be stolen and not returned. So, this
And
guy's, yeah.
listen, man, like I think anybody who knows me, it's no secret. Like I've always felt like punishing players harshly for betting and gambling was like just the stupidest thing because it's like who gives a crap. But I also genuinely did not know that Jonte Porter was actually giving out confidential information, and yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, there's a reason why he's banned. It at first it might have seemed they were trying to make an example out of him, and you could still almost say that they did, but no, he deserved to get this because of that first part of giving
Mhm.
out personal information. But this should be a warning to others that it's not going to be tolerated if you're going to do stuff like that. So,
Is
yeah.
this is Michael Porter's brother, right? His older brother.
No, his younger brother, who looks like he's about 20 years older than him. I don't know how that works out, but he is Michael
Preach.
Porter's younger brother. So Michael Porter, though, Jr. is having a good career now. He was great in college, then came to the NBA, dealt with injuries, but he has now won a championship with the Nuggets, and he is a big staple to their team. So Michael Porter Jr., let's not forget about him, and this could have some distraction to his performance in the playoffs. I mean, your little brother just got banned from the NBA, so you think you're gonna have a normal press conference now? No, those are going to be most of the questions
Do
pointed
you
towards you.
do you guys realize that this is also, unless there's somebody else that I'm forgetting about, but you guys realize that this is the second person from the NBA that Adam Silver banned for life. The first time was when he banned Donald Sterling when he got caught, making making those racist comments.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was anyone else.
So don't mess with Adam Silver, basically.
Well, Adam Silver's gotten some stuff right as a commissioner of the NBA. I it's just so easy to bag on him for the whole political side that has come through the NBA.
Yeah, I was under the impression LeBron James was the commissioner of the NBA, but I think my sources were tied up the wrong.
LeBron James has been everything, man. He's been a player. He's been a head coach. He's been a GM. He's been an owner, man. Like
Yeah,
he's
the
been
modern
everything.
day Jackie Moon, if there was ever one. So is LeBron James at
Dude,
his finest?
there was a meme I saw when LeBron went back to Cleveland, and it was his first year, and there was a meme that said LeBron James, Coach of the Year.
Nah, he kind of was. So, and Crybaby of the Year, Flopper of the Year. He's got a whole
He's
stack of
everything.
trophies. Yeah.
He's versatile.
I know it's a little bit off topic, but I have one last question before we go tonight.
Yeah.
Who has a better beard, Sam Hartman or David Street?
Sam Hartman has the better hair. David Street has the better beard. Let's go with
I'll take
that.
that.
Let's go with that.
I will take that.
Sam Hartman with his luscious, he's more of, I feel like a comparison to Gardner Minshew if there was one.
Mhm. Hey, I'm not going to argue against him, man. Sam Hartman, does have good looking hair.
Some luscious flow up there, yeah. And it's always funny. Yeah, he's always flicking it back. There's always those guys that are always just doing that with their hair that they have to make a point of really just flip
They walk
it
around
back.
like there's a fan on them at all times.
Just put a hat on already, okay?
and by the way, like I can confirm that when you see people do this, we're doing this because we think it makes us look cool. We might deny it. We'll deny it, but there is a reason why we do this quite often.
I only do it because I feel like my hair's out of whack, so that's the only reason why I do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not keeping up with the Joneses, I promise. I just try to get my hair looking a little bit more situated, but that is about all we have today, folks. It's been quite an episode. The NFL draft is something that we are very high on. It is something that we plan to talk more about, and I'm sure it's more of what you want to hear about. So this isn't going to be the only time we talk about the NFL draft, so continue to stay tuned. Hit that like button, share these videos, comment, let us know your predictions on the NFL draft because we'd love to hear them. We could almost pretty much create our own mock draft with that being said, because there is going to be a lot to be talked about on the NFL draft. We don't know until it actually happens. The only things we know about is death, taxes, and Caleb Williams is probably number one. So those are some of the things that we are a little certain about. But yeah, if you could hit that comment button on that, we'd really appreciate that. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.